Free socks.
Test 1, 2, 3, test 1, 2, 3. We're good to go.
What is going on, snoozers? Welcome to another episode of Snooze, where we bring you all the sports news that we feel are the top stories to cover. And by we, I mean I, for the last few weeks. Hope you all had a great 4th of July holiday and ready to cover some great sports stories this week. We got a few to cover that I think are worthy to cover. But before we get into those, as always, we have to start with our Sleeping On segment, which is the segment where I tell you some of the things that I feel like you may be sleeping on, whether that's entertainment related, sports related, life related, whatever. And this week, I'm going to be telling you about a movie that just came out that I think you need to check out, especially if you have kids. If you have kids, I think this is a fun little movie to watch. It's called My Spy. It stars Batista, formerly of the WWE. He's been doing some movies lately, of course, most notably the Guardians of the Galaxy / Marvel Avengers movies. And this one is just a really funny movie. It's got that, that kind of tough guy, spy, and then you get this little kid who kind of, softens him up a bit, and very, very comedic, action type movie. The two, I think they really work well together. Him and the young actress. I don't know her name at the top of my head, but definitely check it out. Me and my fiance were laughing throughout it. Definitely a good movie to watch to kill some time during these times when a lot of people aren't going out too much. So if you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. It is free on Amazon Prime. So if you have that Prime membership, definitely take advantage of that. Moving on, we got 3 stories to cover this week. I say 3 because one of the stories I'm going to talk about, it's 2 different sports, but it's kind of concerning the same stuff. So we'll be looking at some coronavirus cases / who's not going to be playing in the MLB NBA season. I'm going to walk you through this theory I kind of have about the is mostly for UIL, but it could apply to some other Texas and United States schools as well, about could we see some upsets this season if sports do happen? And then, of course, probably the biggest story is that the Washington Redskins and the potential name change that will be happening. So first, we're going to talk about the MLB NBA updates. So for those of you that really haven't been following along, both MLB and NBA are going to be back. Of course, they're going to be back under certain guidelines and stipulations as far as how they're going to handle the coronavirus. That is still happening right now. So they're going to be looking at that. As well as some of the players have said that, hey, you know what? They're coming back, but I'm not. So we'll start with the NBA. So far, as of right now, and of course this could have very changed since I last looked it up, is that 31 baseball players and 7 staff have tested positive for COVID-19 in baseball. So that's about 1.2%. So not a big percentage overall, but still, it's already happening, and the season hasn't even started yet. So what's that going to look like when the season starts? Of course, last episode I walked through the guidelines for MLB, which is going to be, of course, they have to have like 2 negative tests in a 24-hour window. Of course, they're going to have to quarantine themselves, and they're going to have to get approved by doctors and whatnot before they can come back. So we're really going to see how this practice comes into play before the season even starts here in less than a month now. So again, 1.2% from the MLB have tested positive so far, and we do have some decent names in the MLB that have said, hey, you know what, I'm not going to play. Of course, most recently it was David Price of the Dodgers, which I think the Dodgers fans aren't going to be really happy about that. But at the end of the day, it's their choice, and you have to kind of respect that choice when some of these people are going to have maybe sick relatives, sick immediate family members that they don't want to risk having that chance for them to contact COVID. Some other players is Mike Leake from the Arizona Diamondbacks and Felix Hernandez of the Braves have also opted out. And then 3 players from the Nationals, Joe Ross, Ryan Zimmerman, and Wellington Castillo, also have decided not to play in the 2020 season. Zimmerman, of course, his mom has multiple sclerosis. That's kind of one of his factors, and it's one of again, that's probably the factor for a lot of people as far as why they're not coming back is not really for themselves. Although I think in the NBA we do see, and we'll get to that in a minute, some of them sitting out for themselves, but a lot of them is for for their family who may not be 100% healthy. So definitely understandable. So those are some of the big names in the MLB. Moving on to the NBA, so far. They've conducted about 344 tests, and they have 25 now. So they have tested positive. So that's about 7% of the league. So, of course, the percentage is a little bit higher, of course, because there's more players in MLB than there are in NBA. So, of course, it's going to be interesting to see what really happens when the season comes about. I don't think I've seen their guidelines as far as what it's going to take for them to come back once they test positive, but I would assume it's somewhat similar to the MLB's, where they have to obviously test negative for the virus again, and then obviously have some type of clearance from some doctors from both out of the league and in the league as well. There are quite a few NBA players who have decided to sit out. I'm going to run through these names. I think that the Nets probably have the biggest amount of people who are not going to be playing for one reason or another. So we'll run through this list. Victor Oladipo says he's not going to be playing. Another one, Davis Bertans. Now this Bertans, I'm probably saying it wrong. Yeah, Bertans. He's sitting out because he's at the end of his contract, and I think for him it's more about, hey, I had a really good season with the Washington Wizards, and I do not want to risk an injury during the short kind of time frame and then miss my chance on a bigger payday because they're going to offer me less because I'm injured. So I definitely see why he's sitting out. A lot of people are going to say, well, that's, well, you're not looking out for the team. But, I mean, it's a weird time, so you can't really be mad at anyone sitting out right now. Next up, we got Trevor Ariza. Avery Bradley, which is probably, I think, a lot of the one people, for some people, is one of the bigger names because, the Lakers are contenders to win the championship, and so actually they're going to bring in J.R. Smith to replace him, so have fun with that however you will. But Avery Bradley is not going to. Willie Cauley-Stein is another one that's not going to be playing. Wilson Chandler, DeAndre Jordan, both from the Nets, they're not going to be playing. Kyrie's probably not going to be playing either. I mean, he got injured, I think, towards the end of the season. Durant has been clear to come back, but a lot of people don't see him coming back and playing either. So you got 4 people from the Nets not playing right there. You got Thabo Sefolosha from the Rockets. He's not going to be playing. And I think that's really all that I can see right now that I have on my list. Of course, there could be more by the time this show comes out. But those are really the names of the people not playing. I would say probably Avery Bradley and Victor Oladipo are probably the 2 bigger names that aren't going to be playing when the season comes back. And like I said, between now and then, there could be more that come out and say, hey, I'm not going to play for one reason or another. I know a lot of NBA teams, and maybe like, for instance, the Spurs, who are a long shot to get into the playoffs to begin with, might be using this opportunity to get some of these younger players more minutes on the court, so that way when they come back next season, they have those minutes and are ready to go, and their veterans are well rested. So I think you might see some of that as well. Of course, when the season comes around and when that starts happening, we'll let you know all that information. Next up, I was thinking about this the other day, just listening to, especially when it comes about, you hear about, MLB players, getting COVID and NBA players getting COVID and having to sit out for a certain amount of time. And so now I want to talk about a scenario I thought about with UIL. Now, maybe not so much a scenario, but maybe a theory, if you will. And that is, will we potentially see a team that either A, handles the coronavirus efficiently, or B, just a team that you might not typically see make it all the way to the state championship, actually go and win it this year. You have your Alitos who've won it, 9 times now or whatever it may be. Your Carthages who are always there in the fight, in Waco La Vegas and other team, Highland Park these last few years. If we see UIL mandate, like, hey, if a player gets COVID, they have to sit out you get to sit out until you get a negative test or whatever that may be. Are we going to see the teams that prepare well now make it far into the postseason for UIL. I think it could happen. I think you can see the organizations that take the preparations and planning into consideration now, when the season hasn't started, we don't know the rules quite yet. I think those that prepare now are going to potentially see the dividends in the long run, especially those teams that are maybe always in the bubble and they're never quite gotten there. Let's take Cal Allen, for instance. One of the greatest probably football head coaches in the history of the state of Texas, never won a state title. Could the preparation they take now play into a long-term effect then? Because I think what you guys are gonna have to say is, hey, you know what? If someone gets COVID, they're gonna have to sit out for X amount of weeks, or until they have a negative test or whatever. So it's gonna open the door, especially if a star player take a quarterback, for instance. Quarterback gets COVID, has to sit out 2 weeks. That's 2 weeks where yes, you may have a great team, but maybe those other teams can take advantage of that and make it far. Then you talk about getting into the playoffs, especially second, third, fourth round of the playoffs. When you're playing a team, sometimes you'll see districts are skewed one team or another, just because, you can't have a district that's, everyone's going to be as equally good. And so you're going to have teams, bulldoze through their regular season. But when you get to the playoffs, especially second, third, fourth round, you start seeing some competitiveness. And so if you get COVID, then what's going to happen, right? And so I think you could potentially see some Cinderella type stories happen at the high school level, not just the UAL, but you're talking about TAPS as well. The SPC. You talk about other states, Arizona, California, Miami. Are some of these schools that, talk about California, got Mater D, always a household name in high school football. If some of them get COVID, like, is someone else going to be able to step up and kind of take that crown this year? And then you get in the whole case of asterisks with the season or whatever. But, I think, like I said, I think for those schools that plan accordingly now, they're going to have that chance to, put a little pin in the history of their school by maybe making it to state and potentially winning state, whereas maybe in most years they wouldn't have. Now, that's not saying they didn't do it on their own merit or own skill, because you still need some skill to get there. But like I said, you talk about, for instance, the Cal Allen who has a winning pedigree but have never won at all. Maybe this kind of little wrinkle is going to help some schools make it a little further than they usually would, and in some cases potentially win it all. So I am interested to see how that happens, especially, like I said, when playoffs roll around. If this is still an issue where athletes are having to sit out if they get the coronavirus, what that's going to look like, and definitely going to be paying close attention to that, especially me being in Texas and me being, really invested in the high school football realm. So that is going to be, I think it's going to be a topic that I think a lot of people in the Texas high school football kind of news coverage type people, your Dave Campbell's, Vipe, who I work with, of course, or who I work with, we'll be back working with soon. So that's exciting. You heard it here first. I think you're going to have a lot of people discussing the merits of that once, the UILs and TAPS and other leagues come up with their rules about what happens if an athlete or even a coach gets COVID. I mean, let's not forget, if a coach gets COVID, you can't really have them coaching. I mean, they probably coach from Zoom conferences on the weekdays and whatnot, but what's going to happen when, during practice, are they going to be up in the little bird's nest with a big megaphone or whatever? So it's definitely some interesting things that UAL and other leagues have to really determine how they're going to handle once the season starts. If the season happens, hopefully it still does, but you never know with the state of everything going on, which, by the way, wear your masks, people, when you go out, please. It's not that hard to do. Thank you. Moving on to our last topic of the day, and that is, of course, the big topic, which is Washington Redskins getting pressure to change their name. If you haven't heard, a lot of the investors have come out and said, like, hey, we want you to change your names. A lot of these big name organizations have come out and said, we're not going to, invest in your company anymore. The Nikes, the FedExes and all that, have really said, hey, you need to change it. I think Nike, now this may be a sign that they are going to change the name. So Nike has pulled all the Washington Redskins and merchandise off their site, which I think is a good sign that they are going to change it. And I think there's going to be a lot of people obviously upset about this. I mean, it's the name that's been around since, forever. If you look at it since, hold on, I have the number right here. They have their name since 1933. So, of course, people are going to be like, oh, it's the history of it, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, this isn't the first time teams have changed their names. Now, a lot of teams have gone through name changes. You take, obviously the Cleveland Browns, when they went to Baltimore, they became the Baltimore Ravens, and then the Cleveland Browns came back and took the name Cleveland Browns back. When Houston went away, at first it was the Tennessee Oilers, and they changed it to Tennessee Titans because Oilers really didn't fit there. The Kansas City Chiefs used to be the Dallas Texans, believe it or not. So, which, I mean, if you have been following the NFL back when they allowed multiple helmets, they would wear those throwback Dallas Texans helmets back in the day. But I think the biggest one to really show, because I mean, obviously this is probably one of the ones that's being changed for more political reasons, if you will. I mean, you can say political in a sense, yeah, but it's more of just common sense. Like the Redskins. That shouldn't be a name of a team. And yes, it's 2020. It needs a name change. The biggest one this isn't the first time the Washington Redskins have been kind of pressured to change their names. I think this happened maybe 2014 or 13. I think is when the first time it really came about. But it immediately reminded me of when the Washington Wizards changed their name to the Wizards. In the NBA, because they used to be called the Washington Bullets, and then there was the whole kind of connotations of gun violence and everything, and so Washington made the choice, rightfully so, to change their name to the Washington Wizards, and it's stuck ever since. Yes, you're gonna have people upset at the very beginning, but people are going to get over it. I don't hear anybody, talking about the uproar of, oh, why did they change the name of the Bullets? It should still be the Bullets, blah, blah, blah. This happened in the early 1990s. And 20 years later, 30 years later, people aren't talking about it anymore, right? Heck, I think a year after they changed the name, no one was really talking about it. So, you're going to have people upset about it in the very beginning, but people are going to get over it. It's a name that needs to be changed. I think one of the there have been a couple of good name suggestions. I think one of them has to do with the, I think there's Tuskegee Airmen, I think it was. Let me look that up real quick here. Yeah, so the Red Tails is the name suggestion. I think it was actually Dwayne Haskins who kind of threw out the idea. Which, I mean, one, you don't really have to change the color scheme at all, so really all you're changing is the logo. So, I think whatever they decide, it's time to move on from that. Sounds like a lot of the partial owners or investors or whatever trying to sell their stock in the team anyways, and so I think in order to do that, they're going to need to change the name. It's long overdue. It needs to happen, and I, for one, am interested to see what they come up with. It's not going to ruin Cowboys versus Redskins rivalry at all. I mean, the rivalry goes way beyond the name, so bring it on. Let's get this name changed, and I think Dan Snyder, after all these years, it's about time that he changes the name. So that is our show for today. Again, another quick, easy show for, it's a lot quicker when you don't have two people giving their takes on things. But of course, if you ever want to follow me or follow info about the show, you can do that in a variety of ways. First is through Facebook. You can follow me at Joshua Slosik. I'll post little clips about the show there. Then on Twitter and Instagram, you can follow me at JoshuaAct13. I post about the show on Twitter. On Instagram, I'm mainly posting about nerdy stuff or, stuff about my fiance. So definitely go and follow us there. And of course, don't forget to follow us on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, S-News. That's where we post the show. Of course, I always post the links to the show, to the YouTube page on Facebook and Twitter. So definitely go and check us out and give us a listen. Definitely appreciate the support from my friends that listen. And yeah, that is our show for this week. Hopefully some of this stuff with the NBA and MLB get better. Hopefully some of this coronavirus situation, starts getting a little bit better. Wear your mask when you go out, please, people. It's not that hard to do. And, it's just a slight discomfort for some people. I mean, heck, when I wear my mask every time I go out, my glasses fog up constantly. But you know what? It's okay. I went and got an eye exam the other day, and I had to wear my mask the whole time, and every time it fog up. But you know what? It's worth it. It's not that big of a deal. Slight inconvenience that I can live with, and more than happy to live with until we get this thing under control. So until next week, guys, stay safe out there. Wear your masks. And don't forget to keep hitting that snooze button, guys. Peace out.